Hi there, Good Word fam. It's Tisha Lewis, and this is the Good Word that you are watching. And joining me is Prince George's County Council Chair Krystal Oriadha. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yes, it's Krystal Oriadha and Vice Chair. I don't want my chair to
Vice
get
Chair,
mad.
Vice Chair, yes, Vice Chair. We don't want to ruffle any feathers here.
Right.
Vice Chair, thank you so much for joining us on the Good Word. I'm super excited about our conversation and the intersection for you personally when it comes to faith and also politics. So, for folks who don't live in Prince George's County and you are a new face and name to them, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am in my first term representing the Prince George's County Council. So we're the legislative branch for the county. I represent District 7, and I come from advocate background, used to work in corporate America, but was really called to serving because I didn't like what I saw in my community. I felt like I was tired of begging and pleading for what I felt was for people to kind of just do the right thing when no one's watching. And so that really brought me to politics. And now in my about to start my last year of my first term. And so I'm excited about the role and had the honor of serving as vice chair of the county council and helping to be part of the leadership of the direction that we're going here in Prince George's County.
I feel like it's so rare that we have politicians on the Good Word series. You are unique in the aspect of you are wanting to share about your faith and the intersection of faith and politics.
Mhm.
I know that you are the force behind the prayer breakfast and the gospel concert. Tell me what it is like navigating the political world, but also being a woman of faith.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it sometimes could be difficult because a lot of people in politics claim to be someone of faith, whatever that faith might be. But the reality of politics is that it is filled with a lot of lies and people doing things that are corrupt. And to me, I feel like the in total opposite of what at least my faith represents to me. So sometimes being someone of integrity can be difficult because the idea of politics is sometimes people say you should lie, that I'm too honest, that I'm too straightforward, that I'm someone of my word. If I say one thing, they know that that is what I'm going to do. And sometimes people use that against you. And so it could be easy to think that you need to be a different way, that you need to conform to what politics usually is. But I've decided not to be that, to just be boldly who I am. And no means does that mean I'm perfect, but I don't allow this to change my values, my morals, what I believe to be true, for myself and my faith. And I'm just going to show up that way. And we're going to see what happens because I just know for me, God orders all of my steps. And so wherever I'm going to land is going to land where He wants me to be.
Tell us a moment where you had to show up boldly, where you had to lean into your faith, where you were in a situation where you felt like I'm at a crossroads and
Yeah.
I can go right, or I can go left, or I can go straight.
Honestly, that's probably daily, but I think one of the first times that really tested my faith was when I was running for this seat. And a lot of times when you're trying to gain support, uh, it's customary that sometimes people will lie. They'll say whatever they need to say to whatever group to gain their support. And so when I was running, people told me to just promise it, knowing I wasn't going to do what they were asking me to do. And I really had to sit with it. They said, well, you can just say you changed your mind. But I would know that I lied to that individual, that I knew I was never going to align on that issue or I was never going to support that individual. And I decided not to lie. I just was honest from the beginning that, hey, if you support me, if you don't, just know I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to be in line with that. That's something that I'm never going to support. Um, and sometimes I would go into conversations where I think the person would assume they wouldn't support me because of my stance. But by the end of the conversation, they did because what they knew is that I was a woman of integrity and that they could trust my word, which was, I think, a breath of fresh air in politics. And that's kind of been the thing I've had to lean into every time is making that decision of how do I want to show up? Do I want to show up honestly? Then sometimes it also displays itself in policy, um, where there's been legislation where to me, I think my job is to represent the least of these. That's just how I feel. But I would get calls from people about funding my campaign. And one incident that stands out is a shelter. There's a homeless shelter, and someone from an advocacy group attempted to, what I think is bribe me, basically say, if you vote against this shelter and you stop this shelter from coming, we can give you funding for your campaign. And I in no way could stop funding for a homeless shelter. It's just something I could never live with myself if I did. And I definitely couldn't do it for support. And I had to tell them, I'm going to support the shelter. If you strongly disagree with me and the community strongly disagrees with me, my name will be back on the ballot in 4 years and you can vote no. And those are the types of decisions I think we need elected officials to make.
How does Krystal Oriadha end up a politician? How did that happen?
Yeah, so honestly, I had been behind the scenes. Like I think a lot of women of color, usually we volunteer, we support other candidates. We might feel like I can't run myself. Who would really support me? So I had been a fellow for the Obama campaign. I was a fellow for the Hillary Clinton campaign. I'd worked mostly on the government side, but volunteered and spent time in the national campaign sector. But it was after Donald Trump won the first time that I was really moved to get into politics myself. Someone had come to me and said, you should run, you shouldn't wait for someone else. No one's coming to save us, basically. So we all have to be willing to do our part. And I was really motivated to run. And I also felt very strongly that I'm a Democrat and I'm a person of faith. And I had felt that Republicans had commandeered being a Christian. Like they own the word. Like they depict what it is to be of Christian faith and they hold the moral compass. When to
Let's talk
me,
about, let me jump
everything.
in really quick. What does a woman of faith mean to you? How does that shape the decisions that you make and the journey that you're on?
Um, I think a woman of faith means to me that I put every main decision I make to God first. That's really what it means to me. Like everything I do is centered in how will this measure to God and what He calls me to do? And every major decision I have to think of that way. And to me, I think that's the crux of being a woman of faith. And then also prayer is important to me, listening to discernment. Um, and one of the prayers that's really important to me is praying that God remove my ego, that He remove me from the situation and put Himself at the forefront. And also just pray that it ends the way He wants. Sometimes you got to not pray for the outcome. You just have to pray that's in alignment. It's a hard prayer to pray, to pray, because usually you want what you want, but maybe that's
Right.
not what God wants for you. And so to me, that's also being a woman of faith, trusting that He might say no to something, but He sees the bigger picture.
How do we unite, especially in a time like right now, where there's so much uncertainty for so many people? The
Mm,
country is polarized for many people. There's
mhm,
so much going on in the world. How do we come together?
mm, yeah, Uh, that is a very, hard question. I think it starts with humility and it starts with love and compassion for people. I always say that because, I have my faith, but not everyone has my faith. And I, in no means, am trying to force people to believe what I believe in, right? My God gives freedom of choice. And so that's really important to me. But I think what we should focus on is humility and humanity, which is universal, right? Everyone can understand kindness, everyone can understand giving grace to one another. And I think it's trying to have hard conversations and allowing people the space to hear them even if you don't agree. Um, because I think a lot of the issues is that everything's so polarizing because when you hear someone's stance and if you're on the other side of it, it can be triggering for you and traumatizing. And the first thing you want to do is argue and tell them why they're wrong or and I had to deal with that. Like I couldn't even see anything past the first thing that they're saying. But sometimes there's something underneath that. And it takes conversation for us to be able to get to that place.
You said it takes conversation for us to be able to get in that place. What are the conversations that are happening right now? Because again, we are very torn as a country, as a community. We are very torn. So what conversations are happening right now behind closed doors?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversation about how we can each bridge our perspectives, right? A lot of times it's about, well, what can we agree on? We know what we disagree on. Like we're very clear about where we're not aligned. So a lot of the conversation is where can we start where we agree, where we know that we can all meet at this point. So you see a lot of conversations, specifically when it comes to usually things around children, when we talk about um, access to food, when it comes to access to, healthcare, when it comes to access to housing, when it comes to supporting our communities at the from the most basic level. Uh, Usually, we all agree that that's important. Now, we might disagree on how to do it, and the best way to serve our community, but we usually can all agree that those are important and that we want everyone to have those things. And so I think it's important that we start every conversation where we can agree, and then try to have the hard conversations on how we get there.
What would you say is your message?
My message to people is that there's hope, that not to give up in this system, um, or this country, because I know there's a lot of people that feel like the direction we're going in, they feel hopeless and they feel like no one's listening and no one cares, and everyone, especially in positions of power, are just fighting with each other, but not actually getting anything done for the community. And I think that might be what we see on the national level, but on the local level, where I spend a lot of time with people from different municipalities around the country, county government, what you tend to see is a lot of people that care, a lot of people that are doing the best that they can do to serve their community. But I think what we need is for everyone to get involved, not to distance yourself, but actually throw yourself into being involved in your community, involved in politics, involved in what's going on. Because I think that the more people that are involved, the more people that come to the table, the more likely we are to heal our country and to get good work done for the majority of people.
As a person of faith, let me ask you, how does someone go from a bystander standing on the sidelines? Because often there is apathy with what's going on, and I am sure it leads to people wanting to distance themselves, as you mentioned. So, how does someone go from a bystander to being involved in their church, in their community, and what's going on the political scene for their community? How do you go from being a bystander to diving in and being involved?
I always tell people to start with an organization that they feel is already aligned with what they do or what they're passionate about, something they're interested in learning more about. For me, when I moved to this area, there was an organization called Progressive Maryland, and they aligned with a lot of the things that were important to me at that time. I was working on like reentry and focusing on returning citizens and For me, I always thought the solution to crime is to how do we make sure people are less likely to go back into the system, less likely to recommit. And so it was something I was passionate about. It was my first step into local government. And so there's lots of organizations out there that align on specific issues that you know are important to you. And you can get to know people in your community. You can advocate for policy change, or you can do direct services. Because I always tell people sometimes you want to get involved with politics, but sometimes you just want to serve your community. And that's okay too. If you want to just be on
Mhm.
the front line of food distribution or a diaper pantry for mothers that are in need, I just think find a place that aligns with you and then dig in 100% with that organization.
And I think that's such great advice. There's all it takes is one person. Everybody can do something, and you can sit on the sidelines. That's also a choice.
Mhm.
But if you want to make a difference, you can be the difference. Um, we always ask people who come on the good word uh, this question. And for folks who are part of our good word fam, you know what I'm about to ask next, which is what would you say is the good word?
The good word. Mm, Meaning like just something that I think represents a good word.
Yes.
Okay. For me, the thing that I live by is to be a walking testimony. There's a quote
Mm,
that greatness is not a measure of who you are, but the impact you have on others. And I live to be great. It's a motto that I tell myself. And I always say that I want people to see Christ through me, not hear
yes.
Christ, right? So it's not about what I say, it's about what I do.
Wow, I love that. Be a walking testimony. And
Mhm.
often when I say my own prayers, that is a part of my prayer. I want God's light to shine so bright in me that others can see Him in
Mhm.
me and through
Mhm.
me. And again, not just words, but in my actions and how
Exactly.
I move and how I navigate life.
Mhm.
Where can people find you if they want to follow along on your journey?
Yeah, so they can find me at Councilmember KO on social media. And I'd love for them to follow me and learn about the things that we're doing. We have a lot of resources, and that's something important to me. So we have food pantry, so we give out food once a month. We have a lawn program for our seniors. We have assistance programs, and we're also launching free daycare. So I'm just about serving the community in the best way possible. So I'd love for people to connect on this journey and work with us as we work to make the community better.
And so many of these resources before we go that you just named are so important, especially right now. We are in the DMV,
Mhm.
and that's the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area for those who are tapped in from somewhere else. And the impact, we're in I believe, day 7 of the federal government shutdown. And so
Mhm.
the resources that you just named can be helpful to so many people. And even if it's not something that's impacting someone directly who's watching this or listening. A lot of people know someone, have family and friends who are impacted, so it can be helpful in that regard as well. Um, Vice Chair, I got it. Vice Chair Krystal Oriadha, thank you so much for joining us on The Good Word. We'll be sure to follow along on your journey and keep us posted on the latest and greatest.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.